Okay, time is 7 o'clock. Welcome, everyone. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll go ahead and open up the City Council regular meeting. Time is 7 o'clock. The Opens Meeting Act is posted on the rear wall next to the agendas. This time we'll have roll call.
Please vote for roll call. Mr. Jenkins, maybe, okay, thank you very much. 8 council members are present, Mayor.
Okay. All right, next on the agenda is mayor's comments. It has become a tradition here in the council chambers when we have a high school team accomplish a major accomplishment by winning a state championship that we honor them here. And so it is my honor tonight. We have the Fremont High School girls bowling team here with us tonight. They became the first ever NSAA girls state champions for Fremont after an historic season. The girls claimed a perfect record of 25-0 during the regular season and won 4 more to finish 29-0 and claim the 2022-2023 state title. During this historic season, the girls won the Boone Central Pius and inaugural Heartland Athletic Conference tournament. The girls were all business this year after they just missed the finals during the 2021-2022 season. They qualified 3 for individual state and ended up with all 3 in the finals. And Fremont occupied 3 out of the 8 spots in the finals. So first of all, I just want to say thank you for representing Fremont so well. Congratulations on your historic achievement. And so I'm going to say your name, and would you please come forward and we'll take a picture at the end. How does that sound? All right. Okay, first we have Haley Bates, the first ever Fremont girls individual state champion. Congratulations, Haley. Kaylee McKenzie, congratulations. Karina Capron. And other members of the team are Emily Christensen, Alyssa Dorenkamp, Mallory Hansen, Chloe Phillips, Izzy Tedrow, and Kai Valentine. All right. And we have head coach Mark McKenzie and assistant coach Jess Sorensen. Let's give this team a round of applause, guys. Coaches? Congratulations. And you guys are welcome to stick around or leave, whatever you'd like. So again, congratulations. So Okay, we'll go ahead and continue on to the next item on the agenda. Is an item 1 is a motion to adopt the current agenda for the February 14th, 2023 regular meeting. Take any changes to the agenda. Councilman Vaughn.
Yes, I would like to, before we approve the current agenda, strike item number 24 from the agenda. And that is my motion. I don't think it's necessary. Thank you.
Okay, Councilman Sukram,
I'll second.
Councilman Ellis.
Point of information, please.
Okay.
I've asked this to be put on the agenda tonight, not because it's the first time, the second time, or the third time. Councilmember Mark Jensen has disrespected Fremont citizens and fellow councilmen. He has addressed this. Had we addressed this many times ago, maybe the city council wouldn't have had to address it now. Councilmember Mark Jensen needed to be called out for his bad behavior and bullying of citizens and council members. Citizens of Fremont need to feel comfortable bringing their concerns before council. If they anticipate or fear being chastised or minimized in front of council, then that is a problem. Fremont citizens deserve better for its council and especially its council president. All I'm asking for is a documented reprimand for Mr. Council Member Jensen. I hope that in hopes that this behavior would never happen again.
Okay, are there any other changes to the agenda proposed? There is a motion and a second to remove item 24 of the agenda. Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-2, Mayor.
And I would take a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Councilman Sukram,
I'll make the motion.
Councilman Vaughn,
I will second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-1, Mayor.
Okay, moving on to public hearings. Item 2, resolution 2023-007 of Charles Deers LLC, request for the Deers 8th edition preliminary plat consisting of 6 lots on property generally located at the southeast corner of Luther Road and East 23rd Street, Fremont, Dodge County, Nebraska. Will not have staff report.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. This is a request by Charles Deers LLC for a preliminary plat. It is associated with a final plat, change of zone, annexation, and subdivision agreement. The preliminary plat is for the entire area. The final plat, which is the next on the agenda, is for dedicating the right-of-way and then actually creating the lots, specifically the 2 lots that'll be used by the school for an elementary school. The Planning Commission held public hearings on these items at their January 16th meeting and recommended approval, conditional approval, with a 7-0 vote. The outlots will be replatted and rezoned at a later date. The city has negotiated a subdivision agreement, which will be later on the agenda. At the time the comprehensive plan was adopted, this area was shown for commercial use. We had not finished negotiating the agreement with the developer at that point in time. Schools are allowed in commercial districts as well as residential districts. We believe that it's more appropriate to have residential zoning on this lot and then the lot to the west in the future. So we'll need to change the comprehensive plan at a later date. The proposed street network will connect 23rd or 22nd Street and Elk Lane between Luther Road and Johnson Drive, and Elkhorn Drive will be connected as well. The traffic study has been submitted and reviewed by staff, and the offsite improvements are addressed in the subdivision agreement that you will see later in the agenda. The Public Works Director did have some concerns and continuing concerns about grading and drainage. And so our recommendation is that the preliminary plat and then also the final plat be approved with conditions that the developer provide the revisions to address the Public Works Director's comments. That's a real high level. If you have any specific questions, I would be happy to answer those.
Questions for staff? Councilman Ellis.
There's a document in here from our previous Public Works Director,
Correct.
and he mentions that the exit out of the new area should be aligned with 21st Street and not 22nd Street, but I see in the plan it's 22nd. Can you address that?
I cannot address that. As it came out, it was eventually approved by that Public Works Director and the current Public Works Director. It's been addressed in the traffic study, and staff is recommending approval to the configuration as it is.
So having the exit of this new subdivision out against 22nd Street as opposed to 21st Street is not going to cause any problems with backups on to getting onto 23rd Street?
It has been addressed by the traffic study and by the Public Works Director. The intersection will have traffic controls in terms of stop signs. There will be additional turn lanes that'll be in place at that point. By connecting 22nd Street, Deers Crossing, and then also out to what turns into Johnson Road, you have 3 different ways out, so that should help with the traffic flow.
So when did it get switched from when our public director is saying the 21st Street and then it came back at 22nd Street? When did that get changed?
It was all within the plat as submitted and through our negotiations. And it was addressed with the traffic study, and both Public Works Directors agreed at that time that this originally went to the Planning Commission in October, that configuration would be okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for staff at this point from the council? Okay. Okay, seeing none, I'll open the public hearing of resolution 2023-007.
Kyle Hazy with ENA Consulting Group, 10909 Mill Valley Road, Omaha, Nebraska, representing the applicant. Jennifer gave a good overview of what we are covering tonight. On the agenda, we had some earlier discussions with Planning Commission and with Council a couple of weeks ago on this as well. I just want to make myself available for any questions that Council might have on this item and then the following agenda items as well that refer to this project. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Councilman Ellis, do you have any questions? Okay. Questions for the applicant? Okay. Thank you. Any additional comments from the public?
Brad Yerger, 2318 East Fifth Street. I appreciate the opportunity to address the council on this issue and the platting of this. And in concert with some of the questions that have already been discussed and statements that have been made with regards to 21st Street versus 22nd Street access point on Luther Road. In review of the material, I see that the traffic study looked at 22nd Street. They didn't evaluate or look at 21st Street from what I could see. My concerns are these. As a citizen of Fremont, I hope that the city council isn't going to be approving plat designs and street designs that will yield the same congestion that we currently experience on Military and Luther. That intersection is awful several times a day because of the traffic. So if you visualize 22nd Street with a 4-way stop, which was being recommended by the traffic study, a block south of the 23rd traffic signal, with other recommendations by the traffic committee that the turning lanes associated with 22nd Street and 23rd Street turning lanes needing to be the length that they might need to be to handle the traffic flow in the future, selecting a street so close to 23rd Street for the access point to the subdivision seems to be not a particularly good choice. Moving it a block further south gives you better access to having the turning lanes that are necessary and the access to the dealership and the congestion that would otherwise be created. I would certainly ask that this council take into account that the original design was for 21st Street. Changing it to 22nd Street probably does not serve the public as well as the original design. The other thing I'd point out is that there are concepts, and we already have in the plan for city council, to widen Luther Street. That means the traffic will likely pick up even more, and we're going to be feeding traffic from 16th Street, 19th Street for certain. I couldn't see in the traffic study necessarily where they took into account all the traffic that's currently around Claremore School. They were assessing the various roads in and around the subdivision, but Claremore School has a lot of parental and bus traffic today that will move to the new site. All of those vehicles will be traversing on this route and turning to and from on 22nd Street. Four-way stop controls that are one block south of the traffic light, I think is going to impede that immensely. I think you should look at that really hard. The other thing that the traffic study said is that you might have to put a roundabout in that area. I don't see any provisions in anything before you denied on any agenda item where the city is going to get land for a roundabout. And would you consider putting a roundabout 1 block south of 23rd Street Highway interchange? Doesn't seem to be feasible or appropriate that that's where you would put it if you have a traffic congestion design plan. If you were going to have one, it would need to be further south, obviously. And even then, I don't see any provisions here for you to be accommodating that by any type of land provision that you have before you here in this plat or in anything else tonight. The other question that I would raise is with regards to the flood control relative to the raising of the properties on the north side of Rawhide Creek. I didn't necessarily see, and I hope that the applicant, and I realize that the Deers family owns that property as well, but we don't want a repeat of the Central Park debacle that we had with flooding if we're going to raise the property on the north side of the Rawhide and not make sure that we are not going to flood the Deers properties and Deer Point subdivision and the Catholic Church on the south side of the Rawhide Creek, because you'll be creating a dam essentially there. And I know there were some provisions for widening and controlling all of that. My question is, have you adequately considered whether or not safety has been provided to those residential properties in the church on the south side? I didn't see that necessarily being directly mentioned in regards to that. It may have been implied, but I didn't see that it was directly controlled. The other thing that I would mention tonight, and I think the planning director sort of alluded to this, and that is there is a standard flow of the way things are typically treated when it comes to these kinds of requests, and having the proper land use map addressed in the comp plan before and making changes to that if necessary are supposed to precede requests for zoning, and zoning requests and approvals are supposed to precede the preliminary plat. And the preliminary plat is supposed to precede or be followed by a redevelopment plan and a final plat before you get to annexing. And we typically have taken these things out of order and have to write all of these adjustments or accommodations into what we approve. And I ask you to please don't do that. Take these things in the proper order so you don't have to write those in your resolutions. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public?
I'm Glenn Guy, 2550 Deerfield Avenue. I have one question for Jennifer. Is how can you make agreements on anything as far as rezoning, putting in streets, making lots, if the developer and the landowner is not made to clean the Rawhide Creek out? Because once you get establishments put in there, it'll never get done unless it costs a whole lot more than what it's going to cost now before there's houses and streets and buildings and everything in the way. If you can okay it, consciously use your conscience and okay it to be go ahead and be done the way it's sitting there now, you don't belong in this part of the country. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? Okay, close the public hearing. Comments from council. There's no other comments. I would take a motion. Councilman Vaughn,
I'll make a motion to approve.
Councilman Jensen,
I will second.
cast your votes.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 3, resolution 2023-008, Charles Deers LLC, request for the Deers 8th edition final plat consisting of 2 lots and 4 outlots on property generally located at the southeast corner of Luther Road and East 23rd Street, Fremont, Dodge County, Nebraska.
Good evening again. This is Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. This is the request for the final plat that creates the 4 outlots, 2 lots, and dedicates the right of way for the Deers 8th edition final plat. It is substantially the same as the preliminary plat. Staff recommends approval with the conditions that the grading and drainage issues or concerns by the Public Works Director be addressed. Approval of the preliminary plat, which just happened, but also approval of the change of zone, annexation, and subdivision agreement. I'm open for any questions.
Questions for staff? I'll open the public hearing of resolution 2023-008.
Susan Jacobus, 1805 North D Street here in Fremont. You have in front of you a resolution to consider and approve the final plat. And again, it's conditioned. It's one thing to condition your approval, but another on the final plat. And threaded through there again is a report of sorts, the opinion of our prior Public Works Director, but I don't see the same being supported by our current Public Works Director, interim. In Jennifer's words, there's some paraphrasing in there. A comment was brought up before about 21st Street. That was in your past Public Works Director's opinion. But that was supported by Jennifer Dam, but yet not that part. A school that is proposed there is going to load those streets. When you turn off of 23rd, go south, and you're going to come into this neighborhood area, where's the traffic going to bind at? Have you seen any traffic issues at all where the school got put out there by the pool? Were there any issues with traffic control there? If there were, then this should cause you to pause. But approving a final plat means this is it. And yet you're going to have revision after revision. Why would you condition approval of a final plat? It should be as it is and as it needs to be, not conditioned upon these conditions being met. Thank you.
Okay, any additional comments from the public on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Comments from council. Councilman Ellis.
Jennifer, can we ask you a question? So this is, you're asking us to approve this with conditions.
Correct.
How long are the conditions going to take before they can be resolved?
I guess that would be a better question for Justin on the grading plan and Kyle Hazy. Because those are the primary issues that they are working on right now. The other issues, the subdivision agreement also has within it the clause that the grading plan be resolved. And then the final or the change of zone and annexation, you can vote on the change of zone tonight. The annexation, you have to wait another reading on.
So are we talking weeks, months before the drainage plan is completed?
I guess that would be a good question for somebody else.
Okay. It just seems, I really hate voting yes on something that's contingent, especially on this. I understand the urgency of this because the client wants this pushed through pretty quick, don't they?
The school does want it pushed through pretty quickly, but I will tell you, it's not unusual to have a conditional approval on a final plat in other jurisdictions.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from council? Councilman Jensen,
If there's no other comments, I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2023-008.
Councilman Jensen with the conditions mentioned. Is that your?
Yes, with conditions.
Okay. Okay. Is there a second? Okay. Councilman Vaughn. Okay. Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Okay, moving on to item 4 is resolution 2023-024, recommending approval of a class IK liquor license application of La Hacienda Mexican Restaurant LLC doing business as La Hacienda at 3140 East Elk Lane in Fremont, Nebraska. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a little simpler than what we typically have. This is just to add a catering endorsement. State statute requires that we hold a public hearing for that purpose. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Councilman Jensen,
Sorry.
questions for staff? Okay, seeing no questions, I'll open the public hearing. Comments from the public? Okay, seeing no comments, I'll close the public hearing. Additional comments from council? If there are none, I'd take a motion. Councilwoman Ganem,
I move we accept resolution number 2023-024.
Councilman Sukram,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on to the consent agenda, all items in the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or a citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Are there any items to be removed by council, staff, or the public from the consent agenda? Any items from the council? Okay, from the public?
Brad Yerger, 2318 East Fifth Street. I'd like to have item 5 removed for some brief discussion.
Okay.
Susan Jacobus, 1805 North D Street, Fremont. I would like to have the last item on the consent agenda concerning the traffic study removed. Thank you.
Okay. Item 14 would be. Okay, I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda, items 6 through 13. Councilman Jensen,
I will make that motion.
okay, Councilman Sukram,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 5 is a motion to approve the February 1, 2023 through February 14th, 2023 claims and authorized checks to be drawn on the proper accounts. Would the citizen who had the question please address that?
Brad Yerger, 2318 East Fifth. I had this pulled just for a couple of quick questions that I hope would be relevant and of concern to the city council. The first one being, I've been monitoring the claims payments now for several months. To date, I have yet to see the $10,000 retainer fee that's typically paid to Chris Kobach to defend the immigration ordinance. That's typically paid at least in January, and I haven't seen anything yet. So I'm wondering whether or not we have inquired and whether we have paid. It doesn't appear that we have. Second question I has to do with the legal billing that has become an issue in prior council meetings. I see that there are claims in here being paid to the Adams and Sullivan Law Firm again. I recently published something in the newspaper that indicated that In 2022, we paid $475,000 approximately on a $440,000 budget. And the contract for this law firm specifically says that they get paid up to the budget unless there's a request to raise the budget. No such request was ever made to council. I find no adjustments in the claims reports now to, in essence, reflect any refunding by Adams and Sullivan at this point relative to the billing that was effective for the 2022 fiscal year. And I'm wondering why not? I don't see how you can go back and backdated a budget amendment to 2022. I don't see that this council ever authorized payments in excess of budget. And we continue to pay at a significant rate into 2023 without any sort of budget adjustment whatsoever. It seems to me that that's a major failure, not only of the law firm to not know what their contract says, it's a major failure of the city to not be knowing and monitoring what we are spending in excess of what the contract terms state. So I was looking for some sort of refund to appear in here, but I didn't see it.
Councilman Jensen.
No, I just had a question about the Kobach thing. You too. I'd asked you about that. He was elected Attorney General in Kansas. Can he even conduct business as he was doing before?
Travis Jacob, City Attorney, that would be an issue for the state of Kansas. As far as we're concerned, if we wanted to continue to use the services, we certainly could pay it. The question of whether he could perform those services, we'd have to, I guess, look into what Kansas law would have to say about that.
Okay, Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, I just wanted, Dan, could you help clarify those two questions, the status of our retainer with Chris Kobach and the apparent overage on our legal contract?
I'm sorry, I'll go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Sure, either or.
Because I worked on the public records request that was made for that. So in answer to the conversation with Mr. Kobach's retainer, it has not been paid. I'm not aware that anybody has been in contact with him in any shape, form, or fashion to determine if, the council would need to decide that they wanted to continue that contract. If my memory serves me, and I think it does, I don't believe that we paid him last year either. So.
I'm just curious, is that because we decided not to, or he is no longer interested in retainer, or did we just?
I don't know
decide
that
not to?
anyone's been in contact with him. I can bring that to the next council meeting for direction after
would be good.
visiting with him.
Appreciate that.
You bet.
And could you comment on the comment about the overage on our legal contract?
Absolutely. So as I've talked to council many times on this issue, the city does not budget for contracts, for individual contracts, or for, we do budget for services, absolutely, but we don't budget for any individual contracts. Meaning this much for Adams and Sullivan, this much for Dvorak Law Firm, this much for Baird Home, this much for another attorney fee that we might have related to a very specialized topic. When taken in total, through all of the legal expenses, we did not exceed our budget for all of the places that we had money budgeted for legal expenses. So putting that in the contract it was kind of a moot point because we do not budget by the contract.
But if we have an agreement that says, I'm not sure of the number, and I apologize, I've not looked at the contract, but 440,000, that's a firm fee or a firm lid, whatever you want to call it. And we in fact paid what, 475? Does that would say the wording of the contract is not relevant?
If we had if council, I shouldn't say we, sorry. If council had said, we want to budget X for Adams and Sullivan's contract, that would, it had taken some kind of formal action on to that in that regard, that would be applicable to the contract. But we have hundreds, maybe thousands of contracts that sometimes they go over, sometimes they're under in terms of what was budgeted. A prime example was, I believe at the last meeting, the contract was approved for the Bell Street viaduct repair was significantly more than what was budgeted. But we will not go over the overall budget. And that's really when the council passes the budget, you approve two things. You approve the property tax request, which is the amount of revenue that comes in for just property tax, and you approve the appropriation bill, which is the spending, and it's not individual lines of spending, it is in total. The resolution that's included with that, or excuse me, it's not a resolution, it's an ordinance that's included, has the total amount that the council has appropriated for each budget year, but it does not go down to the line item and certainly does not go down to contracts.
Okay, so, and I don't want to belabor this, but I guess I'm puzzled why we even have a contract.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Why do we have a contract then for an amount if it's all dependent on what we budget?
Travis Check, City Attorney. I
Sure.
could just get into the interpretation of the provision of the contract. It's if the city doesn't have an amount to appropriate that is budgeted to pay for legal fees, then obviously we wouldn't file the attorney that would be working for the city wouldn't file a claim for those fees. Bottom line is the city did have enough budgeted money for legal fees. Actually, thankfully, the fees last year came in much lower than what was allocated in the budgeted amount. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's heavily decreased this year based upon some changes to the council that'll probably prevent some attorney's fees from being expended.
Yeah, I'm sure there's something I'm missing. I'm just used to contracts meaning what they say.
Oh, it does mean what it says, and it's been properly interpreted, and there has been no breach, and the council properly approved the claims.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Ellis.
I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but there was a contract between us and Adams and Sullivan. And it said that they would never go over the amount budgeted. And we had last year budgeted 440,000 for lawyer fees. And you guys went to 470.
In the city attorney line, we had $440,000 in the city budget
For attorney fees.
for attorney fees. We also had amounts over on the utility side to include in the instance of a claim for work done by, a contractor with the utilities. And if memory serves, I'm just going from memory, it was $250,000 that we had in the electric fund, as well as an amount that was included in for HR, the human resources, for employment issues that might come up during the year.
So I was under the understanding that the utilities paid half of the lawyer fees and the city paid the other half. And is that not correct?
They pay half and half for Adams and Sullivan. For example, the utilities does not pay anything for Mr. Tuig's services as city prosecutor.
So we paid out 470 out of the city side for Adams and Sullivan.
And we're reimbursed $235,000 from the utilities.
So some of that 440 was not the city's use of Adams and Sullivan,
Correct.
but the utilities.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments from council? I would take a motion. Councilman Jensen,
I'll make the motion to approve item 5 on the consent agenda.
Councilman Vaughn.
I was thinking.
Okay, cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 14 is a resolution 2023-030 authorizing placement of a stop signs at the intersection of 29th Street and Lincoln Road for all 4 lanes of traffic. We'll have staff report.
Good evening. Happy Valentine's Day. Justin Zetterman, Public Works. So this is kind of as we discussed when we brought the resolution to put a stop sign at 29th and Jaeger, that we would then be coming back to handle the interior. We've had some temporary stop signs put up just because we witnessed traffic kind of flying through there. And just wanted to make sure there's some controls. And so this simply getting those stop signs officially authorized so we can put in the permanent ones and have that taken care of. Have any questions? I'm here.
Comments from the public?
Susan Jacobus, 1805 North D Street here in Fremont. The only reason why I pulled this off was to have some slight discussion. It was mentioned that this was discussed at the January 17th Traffic Committee meeting, and that's where they had decided to recommend this, and that was discussed at the utility board, and I've got a copy of the January 17th meeting, but it doesn't mention this part of it. I get it. We need the stop signs. There's no issue with that, of course. Also, on this same paraphrasing from January meeting, January 31st, we had asked at the city level, the council, and also at the public level to place additional stop signs along 19th Street, specifically on Logan, Irving, and Pebble. Because right now we have the nice yellow stripe going down, dividing north and south lanes, traveling east and west. And we have the super majority of those streets with stop signs. And yet Irving, Logan, and Pebble do not have them. So now we've had some interesting near misses because I love having 19th Street being almost a through street. It's a quick access to work. I have a little extra time at lunch to let my dogs in and out. However, those near misses are kind of scary because we used to have them a lot. And a lot is more than one every 6 months along 18th and 19th. But 19th, I think, was a good decision. Our predecessors, our public works director, as well as a prior administrator, had made the decision that this was going to be more or less a through street. So from Main Street to Clarkson, stop signs on all north and south traffic. And from Clarkson to Bell, stop signs on all north and south traffic. And I can appreciate mandating the stop signs so that they're official, even though there's temporary ones in place, but we still have to have the follow through on 19th. Thank you.
Any comments from the council? Additional comments from council? If there are none, I'd take a motion to approve. Councilman Jensen,
I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2023-030.
Councilman Sukram,
Second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on to unfinished business, item 15, ordinance 5637, Charles Deers LLC request for a change of zone from R rural to AR auto urban residential on property generally located at the southeast corner of Luther Road and East 23rd Street, Fremont, Dodge County, Nebraska. This would be for second reading with a request to suspend rules and hold final reading.
Good evening, Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. This is the request for the change of zone for the school property. The remaining outlots will stay R rural until such time those are ready to be developed. We are requesting that you go ahead and suspend the rules and hold the third and final reading of this tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Questions for staff? Thank you. Comments from the public? Okay. Any additional comments from council? If there are none, I would take a motion to hold second reading. Councilman Sukram,
I'll make the motion.
Councilman Vaughn,
Second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
We'll now have second reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, amending ordinance number 5427 as it pertains to the zoning map to rezone the property generally located at the south side of Deer Crossing and Elkhorn Drive from R rural to AR urban or AR auto urban residential, and providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability and providing an effective date on second reading.
There is a request to suspend rules and hold final reading. Councilman Jensen,
Yeah, I'll make the motion to suspend rules and hold final read them.
Councilman Vaughn,
I will second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
We'll now have final reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, amending ordinance number 5427 as it pertains to the zoning map to rezone the property generally located at the south side of Deer Crossing and Elkhorn Drive from R rural to AR auto urban residential, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability, and providing an effective date on final reading.
Please cast your final vote on ordinance 5637.
Ordinance is approved 8-0, Mayor.
Item 16 is ordinance 5638, Charles Deers LLC request to annex property generally located at Elkhorn Drive and Deer Crossing, Fremont, Dodge County, Nebraska. This would be for second reading.
Good evening, Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. This is a request to annex the entire property. Not just the school property. State statute does require that 3 separate readings be held. So we ask you hold second reading tonight and then third reading at the next council meeting. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? Okay. Thank you. Comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, any additional comments from council? If there are none, I would take a motion to hold second reading on this item. Councilman Sukram,
I'll make the motion to hold a second reading at 5638.
Councilwoman Ganem,
I second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
We'll now have second reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, annexing by voluntary petition property generally located at the southeast corner of East 23rd Street and Luther Road, Dodge County, Nebraska, and extending the corporate limits to include said real estate, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability, and providing an effective date on second reading.
Okay. Moving on to item 17 is ordinance 5636, repealing and replacing ordinance number 5503, amending rates, minimum charges, and surcharges for the use of the municipal sanitary system. Now have staff report.
Mayor, City Council, Jeff Shanahan, Utility General Manager. This is the ordinance that was brought to you last meeting. We're requesting that the ordinance is going to have a 10% increase per year on all the rates and charges on the ordinance that we're proposing. We took out a bond for $25 million. Holstone is paying back $10 million of that bond. Every ratepayer in Fremont will be assessed a 10% increase in year 1 and then an additional 10% increase in year 2. We have John Kratzky here, our rate consultant, if you have any questions for him also.
Okay, any questions for our utility general manager or the rate consultant on this item? Okay. Okay, seeing no questions. We'll have comments from the public. Are there any comments from the public?
Larry Marvin, 1945 Morningside Road, apartment 124, Fremont. I have a question because several months ago, I went to the utilities meeting and I thought I understood them to say that that railroad just leaves those carloads of coal sitting there on the track and don't bring them over here. And then we lost our position in getting them refilled and coming back. And Grand Island has the same problem. And I thought, doesn't any one of you people or the managers, the staff have a telephone with phone numbers, how to get a hold of that railroad and tell them to get them over here? You have to sometimes get after the contractors and say, hey, I think you're just screwing us over, because in business, each railroad car is either owned by the utility or by the railroad or by a private investor. And if someone is deliberately screwing around and getting more days pay of that railroad car, then we want what, a 10% raise? Maybe we only need a 3% raise. Our governor wants a 3% raise. And so here we're going to give 10%. And are we failing to pick up that phone and say, get those cars over here? And I thought that when I went to the open house out at the power station, I thought we had this super great big tractor that you could go over and you could get a hold of those cars and pull them over. And I don't know what's prohibited from going over there and getting them and bringing them over here. But I think you need to pay attention to your workers and the railroad and everything. So it's accountability. And I think that there was a little bit not tending to business, and now we're getting a 10% raise. Thank you.
Any additional comments from the public?
Susan Jacobus, 1805 Northeast Street here in Fremont. I'm gonna parrot what I had said before. We've added some large commercial businesses, which is good overall. And sooner or later, we'll have them added more to our tax base. However, when this came before us, Lincoln Premium Poultry, the expansion of Holstone, we knew that we were going to have to expand our waste treatment, and we were going to have to put in a new digester, and you're going to have to add lagoons. There was a lot of opposition to that, but we knew there would be expense coming with that, and these bonds would have to be issued. That said, what's the benefit to the residents? Personally, what's the benefit? Our taxes have gone up. I started out at just over $1,300 a year for my taxes, and I'm now hitting $3,700 7 years later. I haven't done that much work to my house. You've increased the metering rates over the years based on the same person's analysis. The water meters, the electric meters, the gas meters. And now you're asking for an increase on waste rates for the residentials. You're going to pull in over roughly $610,000 in the next 2 years off the residents of these two increases alone, just on these. And then you're going to have another analysis done when everything's all said and done with, to see if you have to raise those rates yet again. Some of you are at retirement age and are more of a fixed income. Some of you, both the spouses, are on retirement. This doesn't sound like much, but when you take in consideration the multiple increases on water, sewer, and electric, just the meters, those hard costs that don't fluctuate, that we can't control. You can make your house warmer in the summer, cooler in the winter, and bring your rate down just a tad bit because you have increased those rates as well. But we can't adjust the metering costs. So when you couple this, you're looking at having raised in the last 5 years, actually perhaps less, roughly $10 a month per citizen. That's a chunk of change, roughly 11,000 residentials. Take that times $10 a month times 12 times 11,000. It starts to add up pretty quickly. But that said, on that fixed income, this also adds up. People are struggling now with groceries. I work in pharmacy. I know what those increases are doing on the insurance companies to the co-pays and the deductibles. I know what the cost of those drugs are costing people. People are in tears, literally, because they have to make a decision if they're going to be able to afford Eliquis or Xarelto or Mounjaro. They have to make a decision. What's going to get paid? Their utilities, their food, or the pharmacy. It's not an easy decision to make. Some of you are not in that position yet, but you will be. And it's heart-wrenching to see it happening. But those costs we can't control, but this is something you can control. You didn't have to add a digester and expand the lagoons to this extent because of the residentials. I think this is an unfair burden on the taxpayer yet again, on that ratepayer yet again. And you're going to slide this through by a head nod without any further thought that it's no big deal, because maybe it's not hitting your pocketbook.
Okay, additional comments from the public? Any additional comments from council on this? Councilwoman Ganem.
I think we do make an effort and try to keep our prices low. And we are so fortunate in Fremont, Nebraska, and with our public utilities, because we don't have blackouts. We have water when we need it. And yes, I have friends who are really, really struggling and are on fixed incomes, and they're much going to be taxed out of their homes in the next several years here if it keeps going up. But citizens talk to me about the cost of everything rising. The same for utilities. We're not paying the same rate as we had for gas. We're not paying the same rate for materials that utilities needs. And yet we're still, if you look in the overall picture, we're still lower than most other states. And so we benefit that way. But looking at the numbers and trying to figure out what would be equitable, because we have a loan to pay back, period. And it was built on the future. It wasn't built for just Holstone or just Costco, because then they would have had to pay the cost for that. We all have to share in that. And I'm not sure if there's a more equitable way to do that, other than to increase everyone's cost a little. On the other hand, too, there's the utilities has a program. I mean, they're a conduit for the program. They don't have the program. They funnel funds. We can give funds that would help people who really struggle. And I've given the United Way telephone number to them who do have a problem. And there's other agencies that will assist, and probably not in every other case, but we do at least have a program that will help people who are really, really struggling with that. So I would support certainly what has been presented.
Councilman Jensen.
Yeah, I just want to challenge Mr. Jacobus' action that we're just head bobbing and not. I know of at least 3 other council people that talked to Jeff Shanahan about this, and it wasn't just blown over. I don't know what you're running for, Sue, but it's not right. It's not right. And it's also not right that you said 10% for the residential is 10% for everybody. So that our big volume ones that are getting, their bills are tens of thousands of dollars a month, theirs is going up 10% also. And it's also not true that we didn't bring all this stuff onto line simply for the Holstone and the Costco's. The standards were changing statewide. We were going to have to change anyway. Yes, we did have to bring it up volume wise, but the standards were changing anyway. There was going to be a lot of that work that had to be done anyway. And thank God we got Costco and the others to at least share in that cost.
Councilman Von Baron.
I don't want to drag this out, but I was another one of those that sat down with Jeff because this bothers me. These rate increases with people struggling. All you have to do is knock on enough doors in our community and you understand that people there are literally people that are trying to figure. We've got neighbors, fact, that have got about 2 weeks worth of groceries, and they're going to have a problem. That said, this was a difficult one for me because Jeff, I asked about who contributes what component contribution. And evidently that study was done in 2019. There's no point in doing it 4 years later. That would just be an additional cost. Went through some of the streams that Costco and Holstone contribute and some of the things that they have done to offset that, keep it out of the public stream. Bottom line to me on this one, this this was not would not have been an easy decision, but we had the opportunity to expand a system against the future with somebody paying 40% of the cost. And I know nothing's ever that clean cut, but for me, that was in that same situation, I probably would have said, okay, let's bite the bullet. The one thing that I would suggest, given this rate increase, and we did it last year, and my full compliments to the council at that time, is that we took into account the burden of the people of the city are feeling. And one way that we can do that is, as we go through the budgeting process next year, keep this additional burden in mind for our people. I truly believe that the city should not be living better than its people. And if our people are under pressure, I think it's only fair for us in the budgeting process to take that into account, to limit ourselves as we need to. And we're in this together as a city. I think that's probably the proper approach. But as far as this decision, I have to agree with it.
Councilman Ellis.
Jeff, maybe you can help me out with my memory because I've been on council this is my second term, but this is our second bond. Is that not right for the wastewater treatment? So the first one was 2019, something like that. And how much was that one for? The electrical, we had some electrical in there too, right?
Yeah, you have to, I wouldn't.
Okay. So I think it was like 40, but some of that was for the electrical, right? So we've got two bonds that we're paying on out there right now. Is that correct? And so I believe somewhere that the sewer was 12 or 11, or I don't know. Do we have any numbers on that? So it's been a pretty big expense for the city over the last couple of years. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Additional comments from council. Okay, I take a motion in regards to this item. Councilman Vaughn.
Don't have to like it, but I will recommend we hold second reading.
Councilwoman Ganem.
Second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Councilman Jensen.
I'll make the motion to suspend the rules and move this to third and final reading.
Okay, I'll keep that motion. I didn't do second reading yet, so.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska. An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, amending rates, minimum charges, and surcharges for the use of the municipal sanitary system, repealing ordinance number 5503 and all other ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance, providing when the rates, customer charges, and surcharges are effective, and providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect on second reading.
Okay. All right, now there's been a motion to suspend the rules. Is there a second? Councilman Von Baron.
I'll second.
Okay, cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-1, Mayor.
Okay. We'll now have final reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, amending rates, minimum charges, and surcharges for the use of the municipal sanitary system, repealing ordinance number 5503 and all other ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance, providing when the rates, customer charges, and surcharges are effective, and providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect on final reading.
Okay. Cast your final vote.
Motion carries, the ordinance is approved 7-1, Mayor.
Okay, moving on to new business. Item 18 is resolution 2023-020, authorizing the mayor to sign the Deers 8 subdivision agreement with Charles Deers LLC for property generally located at the southeast corner of Luther Road and East 23rd Street, Fremont, Dodge County, Nebraska.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. This is the subdivision agreement that goes along with the Deers 8 subdivision. Staff and particularly the mayor, city administrator, and city attorney have spent a lot of time negotiating this over the last several months. This stipulates the responsibilities of the developer and of the city in terms of the costs of the development. The developer is going to pay $957,000 for the offsite road improvements and 100% of the costs for all of the internal development improvements. Staff recommends approval with the condition, as with the final plat, that the grading be addressed between the engineers and the Public Works Director. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions for staff on this item? Councilman Ellis?
So the total $957,000 that was agreed upon,
That's correct.
and that was based on our estimates of what these projects are going to cost?
The estimates were from the engineers, and our Public Works Director reviewed them, and the city attorney and
Just-
estimated.
Just hesitant on estimates because of the Bell Street estimate that we got. So anything,
And it is estimated in.
so anything over the city,
Anything over the city. is
city takes
responsible for,
over, right?
Right, and it doesn't take into account inflation.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you. Comments from the public?
Brad Yerger, 2318 East Fifth Street. Just a couple of follow-up questions with regards to the dialogue that was just entertained about the $957,000 one-time reimbursement cost. I'm kind of shocked, actually, knowing that construction costs are never static. And every time in the recent year, we've talked about construction costs, they have always gone up, and sometimes significantly up. I'm really rather appalled that our city legal that is there in that position to represent the citizens of Fremont don't build into these kinds of agreements something that gives us an opportunity to reflect inflation costs, which were just admittedly not contained here, whether that's labor or whether it's concrete costs. We know that all of those kinds of things have been going up exponentially. And so determining a fixed point in time cost with no variable considered whatsoever, I don't think does the public justice here, because as was admitted a moment ago, is that anything over that will default to the taxpayers of Fremont. I don't understand why the taxpayers of Fremont should have to share that burden. It should be borne relative to those that are creating the cost. Cost accounting is the appropriate way to deal with this. We should have had in this agreement some provision for that to be a sliding scale, at least recognizing inflation. Secondly, as I looked at this agreement in section 4B, that provision for the $957,000 was in 4B. Following that, there's a further discussion about the implementation costs related to the 16th Street intersection, traffic load by further outlot development, the Luther widening project, which is supposedly on our 1 and 6 year plan, is on the horizon. And my question to you is this: this agreement exempts the applicant here from any of those types of costs. Are you going to exempt everybody else along Luther Street from any of these costs when we widen this street, when we have to redo the intersections, if we have to modify right of way? Are you going to exempt all the other people? You're exempting this area. I don't understand why we don't have better clarification and why we would allow applicants in their subdivision agreements to escape. We've done this before, where in essence, you don't have to pay for things that are going to come down the pipe. I don't understand why we're giving those kinds of guarantees to for people in the future, because we are not giving those guarantees to the public. Your first and foremost job is to protect the citizens of Fremont as you sit in the front of the room. It's not to protect a developer. The city attorney's job is to help us protect the citizens of Fremont, not the developer. We need to make sure that we are holding all the cards relative to these agreements and putting the citizens of Fremont first, not secondarily assigning them with these additional costs downstream. So I couldn't be more actually upset with the fact that we aren't going to do something with sliding scale on the fixed costs, and that we're not going to do something relative to the street widening, which we know is on the horizon. That's going to come. And who are you going to assess for that? Or is that all going to be on the taxpayer?
Any other comments from the public?
Mayor, City Council, Maggie Deers Yost, 2445 North Broad Street. Oh, crumb. I think I do that every time. I am representing the Charles H. Deers LLC and Deer Point Corporation. Just wanted to say that we've been working on this project for just about a year now. And this has been a partnership with our family and with the Fremont Public Schools and with the city of Fremont. We have done multiple studies. We have significant infrastructure that will go on site, but also, as many of you know, we are now also participating in exterior offsite costs, which is not a normal procedure. And the school is participating with us as that as well. And they have been extremely great to work with. We have worked in good faith to agree. We've had many, many hurdles along the way. It's been a long process, and there are many of us in this room and beyond that have been working really, really hard on this to make it a great partnership between the three entities. And the goal is to bring a wonderful new addition to the city of Fremont. And so I just wanted to speak on behalf of the applicant that this has been a long and arduous process, and we're happy to be nearing the end and hoping to be breaking ground on the new school shortly. So thank you.
Additional comments from the public? Okay. Additional comments from council? Councilwoman Ganem.
No, just reflecting back on some of our goals and projections on what we were going to be doing as a city. We were already going to be doing 16th Street. We're already looking at widening Luther Road, whether that development was there or not. And so it would seem fair that we would continue to take that part, that burden as the cities, because we would be doing it whether they would be developing it or whether they would not. Now, some of the other developments around the school area, that seems appropriate, and they are participating with exterior things because we would not be doing some of those had the school not been going in there, had that development not doing it. And they're assuming all the developing the interior part of that. And so that is a big chunk, and the school district has contributed. Their Board of Education certainly has contributed funds toward this as well.
Additional comments from council? Councilman Jensen.
I'll just make the motion to approve resolution 2023, I believe it's 020.
Okay. And I'll just add just briefly that I agree with a lot of the sentiment. This has been a lot of work, a big partnership with the Fremont Public Schools, the city of Fremont, the Deers family. And again, I want to thank everybody that was involved to get to this point. I am really excited about the new school. We should all be in the city of Fremont, be excited about a new elementary school and what that can bring and help for the whole community. And so again, it's exciting, and I look forward to cutting the ribbon and welcoming the students. So. Councilwoman Ganem,
Second,
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Okay, moving on to item 19 is a motion to approve the Keene Memorial Library Board bylaws.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Laura England Biggs, Library Director, Keene Memorial Library. What you have before you is an update to the Library Board bylaws that was approved at the August 16, 2021 meeting. Due to an oversight during the transition of leadership, it did not come to you until tonight. That is on me. The changes that were made include updating the citation for the revised statutes, adding with the consent of City Council to sections 1 and 2 of Article 2, some grammatical changes in Article 3, change in the number of members who can sit on committees to avoid quorum difficulties. And for that reason, removing the president as an ex officio on those committees. Changing the hiring practices of the library director to mirror the current city practices. And adding the city administrator as someone to whom the library director is accountable. Finally, striking the original Article 9 on immunity, insurance, and indemnification of the board, as it is already covered by those policies due to being appointed by the mayor and council. So it's really just cleaning up language and making things match current practice.
Any questions for staff? Councilwoman Ganem.
I do have a question, and maybe it's for legal too. On 15.4-8, it says the decision of the board when we're
That's in
reviewing.
the manual.
Oh,
not
that's the other
bylaws.
manual. Sorry. That's right. Sorry.
Any questions for the library director here on the bylaws presented? Okay, thank you. Any comments from the public?
Sorry, I don't hate to be the broken record, but I have a couple of comments for consideration on this item. I just heard the library director say an effort was made to make sure that these changes and the language contained therein reflect what's in state law and city code. And that being the case, and that these were reviewed by legal. And so I'm assuming that legal's good with what's here. So in my review of Article 3, Sections 1, 2, and 3, I find that the language that's being proposed here doesn't correlate with the language in Section 3705 of the city's current code. The changes may be not terribly significant, but if you're in essence copying out of state law or city code, which we typically do in a lot of our city government's documents, then the language would be verbatim. And in this case, it's not. With regards to Article 8, Section 1, which talks about the appointments and approvals necessary, I would refer council to Section 3705. And I'm going to read it for you. It says the library director shall be appointed by the mayor with the advice of the library board and with the consent of city council. And that's not what's being reflected here. Municipal code should be followed. And that particular section change should reflect what's in city code. Something less minor, it's really duplicative, but as I read Article 8, Section 2, talks about the librarian being supervised or whatever by the city administrator. City code reflects the same, but we say it twice in the same paragraph. It's supervised by the city administrator and under the authority or whatever of the city administrator at the end of the sentence. Seems duplicative, and if we're cleaning things up, I don't see any point to repeat. But the most egregious thing is that you're not following city code with regards to 3705. Please take that into account and make sure that if you're going to approve this tonight, you make that fix or you continue this item until such time as that language would reflect Fremont City Code. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from the public?
Ray Meister, 121 South William Avenue. Just a question. Where is the opportunity for public input on any of these policies or procedures? Does the public have anything to say about these? After all, we elect you, we support you financially. I'm just wondering where there is an opportunity for any public input. I cannot even find those readily to review them myself. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments from the public?
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Linda McLean, 2810 East Bristolwood Drive. I just wanted to say in response to Mr. Meister's comment that all of the board meetings of the library board are open to the public. All the agendas are online and these items are available. No one really has come to any of the library board meetings for probably the last, I don't know. I've been on the board over 2 years now, and it's rare that we have any citizens come, but they are open. Anyone is welcome. And these items all were discussed. We are trusting the legal review from the city. So thank you.
There's only one opportunity to talk per item. Yep. Are there any other comments from the public? Okay. Councilman Ellis.
I'm just a little concerned from our legal team that you reviewed this, but it goes against municipal code. Can you answer that?
Yeah, Travis Shagat, City Attorney. Can you point to a specific area you're concerned with?
Well, he mentioned the first one was the section 705 of our municipal code, fairly small, but it says in the municipal code that there'll be a chairman and not a president. So why would it seems simple. And then picking of a library director. I mean, shouldn't we just use the municipal code as a foundation for everything? And if we're not, then we need to change our municipal code to match.
So you're worried about the term president and chair?
I mean, it's minor, but again, we have our municipal code for a reason. Their words do mean something, right?
Yeah.
And so we state in the municipal code that a chairman will be selected.
Okay.
And here we say a president. They want to change it. And then picking of the library director. Can somebody explain to me what is that process and why are we changing it?
Selection of the library director. Where do you see a change in that?
Article 8, Section 1.
Yeah, what? Let's see. Yeah, I guess I'm seeing a distinction without a difference. The bylaws may be a little bit more specific than the general statements in code. And as code says, the council has the right to approve bylaws. So there's no legal distinction here. This may be the difference between a president and a chair doesn't necessarily make a difference. If the library board selected to use president, that's fine. I don't care if they change it back to chair.
So they're asking that the appointment by the mayor with the advisor of the board and consent of city council be removed. Is that not how? Is that in our city?
It's already in code. It doesn't matter whether the bylaws have it there or not. I mean, the code
So
will say what
why
the
would
code
they
says.
take it out of the bylaws if it's
Maybe
already, it's in the bylaws already?
Yeah, maybe
Why-
to prevent being duplicative, I suppose. But the code would be enforced in that instance.
Yeah.
There's conflicting code sections, however. In chapter 2, section 2-502, under hired officials, the library director is listed as one of the hired officials, which is distinctive from the appointed officials, which are remunerated in 2-501 of those that are appointed by the mayor with the consent of the council. So when we're pointing to city code, there's conflicts within city code itself. Because chapter 3 says appointment, chapter 2 says no, hired.
So as we want to get a new library director, where do we go as a city? Do we go to the bylaws or do we go to?
Oh, you'd go to city code for sure.
City code and
Mhm.
in 2 places in city code.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Comments from council? Any additional comments? Councilman Jensen,
I'll make the motion to approve the Keenan Memorial Library Board of bylaws.
Councilwoman Ganem,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-1, Mayor.
Okay. Item 20 is a motion to approve the King Memorial Library Policy Manual.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Laura England Biggs, Library Director. What you see before you is a cumulative amount of a lot of work to update the policy manual for the library. We removed all of our forms and references to those on advice from legal counsel, so that when we make a simple change to a form, we don't have to come back to the board and to the council, because forms change, policy should not. We updated the mission statement and general objectives in section 1 to mirror what came out of our community needs response plannings sessions for the 2022 to 2027 plan. We updated our current library hours, as they probably are not changing anytime soon, and it's less confusing that way. Our volunteers, we will place from 9th grade on instead of 5th grade. We found we had fewer behavioral incidents with the older volunteers. We removed the phrase assistant director, as that billet is no longer part of the city's staffing, and inserted circulation manager, adult services librarian as the backup to payroll. There's an addition of what kind of staff support we can offer patrons, so they understand what we can and cannot do with computer assistance. We removed the reference to property owners from those who receive cards at no cost, which was actually approved by the city council in February of 2021. Removed all references to fines and late fees, since that was approved in the master fee schedule, April of 2021. We added some interlibrary loan limits on how many loans people can request, and removed references to music, CDs, and periodicals, since we removed those collections from our library due to lack of use. Updated payment methods to allow for credit and debit cards in 6.8.8. There was an update which allows the library to decline replacement material offered if somebody is attempting to replace rather than pay for a lost item. There was an insertion of a section on discovery of bed bugs or other insects in materials and how we would address that. We removed a suggestion box reference because that's been gone for several years. We found when we had it, it was mostly a receptacle for trash. And the occasional suggestion for things that were not necessarily polite. We added a section on our public wireless internet Deleted genealogy printing since it matches the black and white printing costs and no longer is twice as much. We changed the requirement for proof of permanent residence for good standing. For checkout of electronic devices, they can we put limitations on how many devices they can have and return policies for those. We inserted having the Durham Museum Pass and digital projector available as resources. Removal of references to outdated spaces since they no longer exist due to the renovation project. And finally, the section updating the challenges to library materials, which I believe Councilwoman Ganem was going to make a suggestion on, because there is a section that is in conflict with the municipal code.
Questions for our library director from the council? Okay, Councilwoman Ganem.
Not so much a question, and I had talked with her just before the meeting because Travis, it was 15.4.8. The decision of the board is final when we talked about book challenges. And so that needs to be changed because that's the part that's in conflict. And I was looking at the decision of the board is final, subject to review by city council. Would that accommodate,
Yeah,
make it more clear?
It would make it more clear for sure. It really isn't in conflict because.
Well, it's
the
not
board-
conflict.
Yeah, the board is finals and city council has the final review under ordinance, but that would make. sure
Right,
that there's
but that
not
would make
confusion.
sure that it's not confusing.
Mhm.
Because it made it sound like that was final. If someone's not acquainted with the city ordinances, which they probably aren't, I wouldn't be going through them as night reading necessarily, but I thought it might make it more clear. It would clarify it. Does that sound appropriate?
Yeah, I'd be fine with that change. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from the public?
Excuse me. Larry Marvin, 1945 Morningside Road, Fremont, Nebraska. I passed out some junk mail to you and I had that same thing as I thought that by reading the Fremont Tribune, I think it was, that you forfeited your right on that to the library board. And now I think you should have public clarification for taking it back, because I think it should be with the council. But if you forfeited it, you really should apologize and make time for, because a couple of weeks ago, we had quite a few people here griping about a book and I'm not for censorship. and there was, I think, just misunderstanding. But thank you for doing that, because I want everybody to be fair, but I think that the power should be right here. That it sounded to me like from the paper that you forfeited it away. And once you give it away, it's not appropriate to just take it back. So thank you.
Red Yeager, 2318 East Fifth Street. I'll try to keep this brief. I noticed in section, first of all, let me just say, I applaud the library and the library board for putting in a red line version of what they're proposing to change, which makes it an awful lot easier for council and public to actually see what's being, and certainly she explained it as well. So applaud for that. I would like to just make a notice of a couple things that I noticed as I read through this. For example, in section 1.3.1, there's a statement that says our objectives are to complete a library expansion. That's a rather temporary kind of a function. I'm not sure that that statement really is appropriate in the general objectives. And if you remove that, the rest of the objectives of the library seem to be appropriate, because this sort of time dates the municipal code and would probably have to be extracted anyway after the library expansion has been completed. So leaving it out, I think, does no harm to the general description, and that'd be my recommendation. When you get into section 8.2, I don't see anything that addresses the how or what regarding the Internet Protection Act filtering that is required by the federal and state obligations, and we certify that according to city code, but I don't see anything in our policy manual that sets forth how we go about that or what we do in order to do that filtering. I think it would be appropriate if that was included. Section 15 states that all libraries in the materials collection can be accessed regardless to age. There isn't any discussion about whether or not there's any age appropriate standards. It seems to me maybe there should be some recognition of what that is, because as it would perhaps tie into CIPA certification, there might be an issue there that needs to be clarified, and that's where you would do it. In section 15.2, regarding the selection of materials, it doesn't set forth any process or reference relevant to state statutes regarding any material selections. We're citing state statute in a lot of other places that give rise to the foundation of the library, and city code in some places as well. So having something that defines what materials would get into a collection would be appropriate in the selection of materials section 15.2. And I appreciate Councilman Ganem's recommendation with regards to section 15.4.8 as well. That was on my list of things as well, because truly I think the board is in a position to either affirm or modify or reject the librarian's complete decision. And therefore it goes to the library board and they can do one of those things. And then obviously if the complainant wants to take it further, they can, or if they're satisfied with whatever decision the library board made in either modification or rejection, they wouldn't need to take it to city council. But I appreciate the fact that you recognize that as well, Councilman Ganem, and that language would be changed. The other thing that I would ask, and I have no clue on this, but the documents that are attached in the back of this that are referenced, they called the Bill of Rights, the Code of Ethics, and the Freedom to Read attachments. Many of those are dated many, many years ago. I'm wondering if there isn't something more current that should be referenced here rather than documents that reflect as far back as 2009 in some cases. If there's something more current, I would suggest that you ought to update that particular section to whatever's relevant and current today. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from council at this point? Councilman Von Baron.
I'd like to ask that the library consider an amendment to their policy. And if you'll bear with me, I'd like to give you some background. The library president, our director, and our administrator were very patient. They gave me an hour to sit down and speak with them and just ask questions. And if I'm speaking out of turn or if I get any of this wrong, I'd invite them to correct me. But I think we've all been bothered by what's going on and the furor over a book and all of that. But I think there are a couple of basic facts. Number one, it's pretty clear by legal statute that book does not rise to the level of obscenity. So as far as removing it, that's probably a moot issue. But I think the issue that's been overlooked in all of this is really at the core of it is parental control. So we talked about a number of things. I pointed at my contention. I'll give you the back and forth. I was thinking that parents should not be concerned about what their children see in the library, and library policy as it is does say that parents need to be with children at all times. Well, if you've had children, especially multiple children, or if you've ever taken a daycare group or something like that anywhere, you know that's difficult. But it's still library policy to leave it up to parents to control what their children see. So I asked about removing questionable books from the children's section, and library policy currently is right, wrong, or indifferent. It's just what it is. It's that they can pick up anything they want. So I asked about displaying by content, and right now, I believe this book was displayed, if I remember correctly, because it's by the Dewey Decimal System and not necessarily topical. Okay, so we got that. I asked about parental input, maybe a parents advisory group, and I understand their logic. That is in fact a slippery slope. We're not going to get an agreement. It has the potential to create more problems than it solves. What about defining books as something that parents and children should read together and just move those? Well, we can't create a separate section. I say all that to help you understand that this wasn't just a hard line discussion. We were just trying to probe through this. But there are a few facts. Number one, I think display policy might be improved because the Dewey Decimal System was clearly at this point with this book, it was in the appropriate place. But even the comment was made that perhaps it was a mistake to have it in the children's section. And that's fair. I think it probably was. The book in reference has been censored in public school libraries, but primarily, as I understand, just because there is no parental control there, which I think is the issue with the library. I took a look at sex is a funny word. The book itself says that the book will be read with children, not left for them to find. It's intended to be used in that way. And it also cautions the adults to read through it on their own before they read to the children. Obviously, we can't do that. So either way, right now, we just don't have the policies. So my thinking is that there might be a compromise here without inflicting an undue burden on the library. I'd like to offer a simple amendment to the policy that just simply gives the parents what they need for control and yet doesn't unnecessarily burden the library. And that's a simple statement. Any parent having a child age 11 or under may, on written request, have a specific book moved from the children's section to the adult section. And what that does, this is only parents. I can't come in as an aunt or uncle or somebody and say, I don't like that book. This only parents can do that. It provides a formal, orderly process for a book to be moved out of the children's section. I think what's important is it treats everybody equally. If I don't like your faith-based book or a book on abstinence, any parent can have that removed as well. So be careful what you ask for when you move a book, because it would work both ways. We already have the precedent of the first action when the book was contested was that the book was moved to the adult section. So we've already acknowledged that can be done. And it does seem consistent with overall library policy that it is up to the parents to control what their children see. So I apologize for all of that, but what I think in a one sentence amendment, if we allow any parent to take out a book and move to the adult section that they find objectionable, no questions asked, just do that. But it gives everybody the equal opportunity to control their children's access without putting an undue burden on the library. So I apologize for the long tirade, but I'd like to put that in the form of a motion.
Okay, Councilman Jensen.
I don't know if you're taking a second on that motion yet, if you want to.
Councilman Von Baron, do you mind shutting off? Thank you. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to speak to, I guess my concern there is, you say it has to be a parent. There's an awful lot of houses that don't have parents. Grandparents are being raised. They're being raised by aunts and uncles. I don't think you can just say parents just because that's not the 100% norm.
Well, that would require change.
It required change and required more than a one line change. We can't just say one. That was the only thing. And I just wanted to ask you, according to Mr. Yerger's questions about the manual about something that maybe should be removed about the expansion. How often are these things updated? And I mean, if regular updating is part of it anyway, it's really a moot point. It's going to happen anyway at some point.
The first general objective is what was approved by the library board and the library staff through the planning process. as written. So to remove anything would be to make a change to our community needs response plan, which is published. We recognize that it is a time-bound objective, and there's nothing saying we can't revisit it during that 2022 to 2027 time period, but it is what the group came up with.
And if I could just briefly add to that, the policies supposed to be reviewed every 2 years.
That was my question.
Yep, and then it can be obviously reviewed sooner than that, but 2 years is generally the benchmark.
Okay.
Or people say parent or guardian.
Order, please.
Yep. I'm not quite clear on the every 2 years. Is that material here?
I'm sorry?
I'm trying to understand the relevance of being reviewed every 2 years.
Oh, Councilman Jensen asked.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, no, and as a follow-up, that would be my question. If I would think that it could be simply parent or guardian. Right now, the policy says parent, but I would think we could expand that to say the written request by parent or guardian. Just simply having the book moved. It's not altered, removed, etc.
The only thing I would recommend is this was reviewed by the library board. We could always come back to this manual at any time if we wanted to approve it as is and then suggest revisions to it. We could come back to it at a later point, work with Laura on that. That's just a suggestion. I'm not trying to dictate policy, but that would just be a suggestion. It could always come back for review at a subsequent council meeting.
And there is a mechanism by which parents can request something be moved. It's called a challenge to library materials, section 15.4.
Okay. Well, I think we got a couple of motions that we want to amend this, so I just want to make sure we get through all the comments from council and then we'll go to them. Okay, Councilman Ellis.
So Laura, you made the comment that what we've got in front of us can't be changed because you guys have already submitted it or something?
Only
published it?
that general objective. That was what was approved and has been published as our community needs response plan. It doesn't mean it can't be revisited,
Okay,
but as written, that's what has been published.
so how do you recommend, because it sounds like we've got a couple of changes here. This is not in any hurry because it's been sitting where it's been, it's a year and a half late, right, to us, so.
This was actually approved November 2022.
Of last year. So is there any hurry in getting it approved tonight? Can it go back with these suggestions and get it changed and then bring back?
It certainly can. If it's not approved tonight, there is no appeals process on the challenges to library materials.
So state that again.
If this policy manual is not approved tonight, the current policy manual has no appeals process to the
So
challenges to
explain
library
So
materials.
explain the appeals process.
That's what's spelled out in 15.4, where they submit the reconsideration form to the director. Director has 15 business days to render a decision. If the complainant doesn't like the decision, they have 10 business days to appeal to the library board, and the library board can choose to put it on their agenda to be heard.
So that is not current.
That is not current practice in the policy manual,
It hasn't been approved by council.
as approved by
Hasn't
council.
been approved by council.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other comments from council? We'll go address these motions then. Councilman Ganem.
Well, I wondered if the one motion should be changed tonight. The decision of the board is final, subject to review by city council, just for clarifications. And I would make that a motion.
Okay. Okay, that would be the first motion to again amend the policy. Councilman Jensen.
And I will second that.
Okay. Cast your votes on the amendment to the policy.
Motion carries 7-1, Mayor.
Okay, Councilman Von Baron, you have an amendment. You had a motion forward. So what would you like to do with your motion?
Well, I would assume since we've made that motion to change this policy, then the appeals process is still stopped for next week. Is that what I'm understanding?
No, if we approve this tonight, the appeals, the process continues
It
forward.
will continue.
Yes.
Then I'd like to let my motion stand, please.
Okay,
But I would modify it to say, and I think Councilman Jensen made a good point. Parent or legal guardian.
okay, so there's a motion. Is everybody clear on the motion?
Would you like me to read it?
If you could, please.
Sure.
Just
Yeah, and Councilman Von Baron, where would you like the amendment inserted? Did you want to insert it in that 15.4 section?
I think so.
Okay.
That seems appropriate. No, the amendment simply reads that any parent or guardian having a child age 11 or under may, upon written request, have a specific book moved from the children's section to the adult section.
Okay. That's a motion to amend the policy.
Correct.
Okay, Councilman Sukram.
Okay.
Okay, cast your vote on the amendment.
Motion carries 7-1, Mayor.
Okay, I'll take a motion to approve the policy manual as amended by both motions. Councilwoman Ganem,
So moved.
Councilman Von Baron. Okay, cast your votes.
Councilmember, thank you. Motion carries 7-1, Mayor.
Okay, moving on to resolution or item 21, resolution 2023-031 to affirm emergency declaration by the mayor and utility general manager for expenses in excess of spending limit for repairs to the Lundy Wright Unit 6 turbine and generator.
Mayor, City Council, Jeff Shanahan, Utility General Manager. We started the inspection of Unit 6 a few weeks ago. When we opened it up, we found some damage to the turbine, and some other associated equipment. We need to get that available and get it fixed. It's going to exceed our spending limit, and we're going to just go with the contractor to get it going. So we're asking that you affirm this emergency declaration for these repairs.
Okay, questions for our utility general manager? Okay, seeing none, any comments from the public? Okay, seeing no comments, any additional comments from council? If there are none, I would take a motion. Councilwoman Ganem,
So move.
Councilman Jensen. Second. Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 22 is resolution 2023-032 awarding the contract to Virginia Transformer Corporation for purchase of substation transformers. Go ahead, staff report.
Troy Shaven, Assistant General Manager, Utilities. Y'all have the backup material, but I'll try to do a quick synopsis of what we're doing. Purchasing 2 substation transformers due to age anticipated growth. One will be at substation G. That's to accommodate anticipated growth on the south side of town and to assist with some aging transformers at substation A. And then the other one will go to substation E, which also has some older transformers and will be replaced. We took bids for the 2 transformers. We're proposing to award to Virginia Transformer Corp. They were not the low bidder. When we do the transformer bids, we have a base bid, and then you take what's called an evaluated bid, which takes into account efficiency, losses in the transformer, delivery time, stuff like that. Of the bidders that we are not accepting, one of the main reasons is because they took technical exceptions to the specifications. Bidders 1, 3, and 4 took a technical exception to the vapor phase testing. Number 2 took a technical exception to the welded cover. They were providing a bolted cover. Both of those 2 items have to do with water in the transformer. Obviously, water and oil and electricity don't mix. The vapor phase testing provides the least amount of moisture in the transformer. Number 1 and number 3, in addition, the prices were not guaranteed. There was a potential for escalators, depending on material availability, stuff like that. Number 2 and 4, we really haven't done business with before. And neither one has a local representative. So if there was an issue during the process, it wouldn't be as easy. The other companies have representatives at least in the area of like Kansas City or Des Moines. Number 1 and 3 also, their delivery time was substantially longer, almost twice as much time as number 5. So for those reasons, our electrical engineering department is recommending Virginia Transformer Corps as the lowest responsible bidder. I can answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you for that explanation. Any questions for staff on this one? Okay. Seeing none, any comments from the public? Seeing no comments, I'll take a motion if there's no other comments from council. Councilman Jensen.
I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2023-032.
Councilman Sukram.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 23 is ordinance 5639, amending chapter 6, articles 1 and 2 of the Fremont Municipal Code relating to animal control. This time we'll have a report from Chief Elliott, the Chief of Police.
Good evening, Jeff Elliott, Chief of Police. What you have before you is a revised, rewritten version of the animal control ordinance for the city of Fremont. One thing I'd like to do first is explain about a red line version. When I put this ordinance on the agenda last Wednesday, I was unaware that it required a red line version. That morning when I talked to the attorneys, they told me that I needed a red line version. Because most of the ordinance had been rewritten and revised, I redlined out the entire old ordinance and put it on the agenda anyway, because I wanted to move forward with this. Over the next couple of days, I was contacted by a number of people that explained to me the difficulty they were having in trying to tell the difference in what had occurred between the old version and the new. So we began work on a revised red line version, which we completed this morning. I was informed I could not put that on the agenda because of the late time, but I have that completed. I have copies of it, and with your permission, I'd like to provide it.
Okay. I take a motion to receive, Councilman Jensen.
Motion to receive.
Councilman Sukram.
Second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Go ahead, Chief.
Okay, again, what you have in front of you is a revised rewritten animal control ordinance. I'll try and give you a brief history. In 2014, some politicians at that time rewrote our animal ordinance. And that ordinance was on the book for a couple of years when it became obvious that there were a number of problems with that ordinance. In particular, one of the problems was that there were elements of the dangerous dog portion of the ordinance that we're running into that the ordinance didn't address. Additionally, the part of the ordinance had been declared unconstitutional by a county court judge. And finally, we had legal advice that advised us that we could not use the appeals process because the appeals process under the ordinance required the city council to hear appeals and to do so informally. Legal counsel at that time told us they couldn't sit informally and hear appeals. So the moral of the story is we had no appeals process for appealing dangerous dog declarations. So at that time, what we did was we started using the state statute to deal with dangerous dogs. So we used that for a number of years. However, just recently, back in November, we ran into a problem. The county attorney's office informed me that they could not prosecute dangerous dog violations under state statute because the city did not have a valid appeals process. I disagreed with this point of view, but it wasn't a point that I was going to win. So the moral of the story is we have no dangerous dog ordinance, either state or local. We have no way to enforce dangerous dog violations. So I felt it imperative that we move forward quickly with the ordinance, and we began working on this in earnest. So this ordinance started actually 4 years ago. Myself, a couple former Councilman Yerger was part of that team, and a number of people began working on it. Over the summer, myself and at that time Councilman Yerger and Kelly Brown, a 20-year veteran of animal control with the city of Omaha, assisted us, and we worked on that and produced a draft. After I got informed of what the county attorney's office had explained about not being able to use the dangerous dog, I moved forward with revising and completing the ordinance that we began. So that's what you have in front of you. What I'll tell you is this is a collaborative effort by a number of people. I can't tell you how many revisions, literally dozens, this ordinance has gone through. And it's been reviewed by at least 3 different attorneys. Myself, Ms. Brown, Councilman Yerger, multiple other people prior to that. So it's been through the ringer. What I would also say is that there are going to be changes that some of you or some of the audience may want. We're open to those changes. We're not opposed to anything at the moment. I don't know what specifically people want, but ultimately that'll be you guys' decision on what you want in this ordinance and what you don't. My suggestion is call me up if you have a problem. I'll explain what we did, why we did it, and then ultimately it's up to you folks as to what you want in this. I will tell you that we will meet again next week to discuss this. If people have issues, contact our councilman, tell us what those issues are. We'll get together and we'll meet and we will try to address the issues and deal with it. With that, I would take any questions.
Okay, questions for Chief Elliott? Okay, Councilman Vaughn.
Chief, I was just curious about in the staff report, the very last sentence before the fiscal impact, it talks about how these changes are needed immediately. And I don't necessarily disagree with that, but when I started going through this, I found enough oddities that made me wonder if those two issues could be reconciled. Do we need it that immediately that we couldn't possibly rectify some of these potential weird things that are in there? And it sounds like you are open and receptive to that. And I can just cite a couple of examples. I'm not, asking for answers or anything, but some of the things that I noticed that were semi-strange to me, and I may not have the full grasp, dangerous animals and deciding that fact, any Fremont police officer, animal control officer, or other law enforcement officer. So a single person will make that determination of if a dog is a dangerous or potentially dangerous dog. And I wondered if that maybe wouldn't be something better served to be done by the Animal Control Commission.
Okay, so here's how that works. The animal control officer, the Fremont police officer, the law enforcement officer makes that determination. However, if you read farther in the ordinance, there's an appeals process. So if you disagree, if your dog is deemed dangerous and you disagree with that, you have the right to file an appeal with a appeals board that is created under this ordinance. The appeals board would hear the appeal and decide whether or not they believe the animal is in fact dangerous. It's an administrative appeals. And when I was speaking about the appeals process earlier with the county attorney's office, that is what I was referring to. Finally, you mentioned the immediately part at the end of my staff meeting. I probably didn't word that as well as I should have. I have no intentions of seeing this pushed through on one reading tonight. My intention always was 3. But what I'm not interested in seeing, and what I think you all should not be interested, is seeing this put to a commission and last another 6 months or 3 years or however long it takes to be done. This needs to be done if you want animal control enforced in the city. If you don't, then then we can sit and leave it. But if you want it done, it needs to move forward.
So Chief, another one, a little bit of a backstory, this weekend, this Saturday night, I had the opportunity to go to the Fremont Area Health Foundation annual gala, and part of the festivities, I'll call them there, was an auction of a puppy, Portuguese water dog. And I was actually a person who raised my hand and put a bid on that before I got the corporate elbow from my wife to stop. But regardless, the way I read this section, and again, maybe I'm not interpreting it correctly, it seems to suggest that would be illegal going forward.
I think in certain circumstances it would. Kelly Brown is an expert in this area, and I will call her and let her address that question.
So that ordinance, it's actually quite common in most municipalities that surround the Fremont area. And there's a number of reasons that it is introduced, but one of the biggest things is because it promotes responsibility. A lot of people go to these auctions and they're not really thinking that they're going to be coming home with a puppy. So they go, they buy this animal, and then they're like, oh dear, what did I get myself into? And so that kind of causes issues with the animal being surrendered to a shelter later. But also, we've seen some issues here in the city of Fremont with animals being sold at auctions in poor conditions. There's actually been some exotic animals that are not even lawful in the city that have been snuck into your city and sold at these auctions as well. So those were the reasons behind those changes. So.
Okay, well, I can tell you that little puppy was one of the most popular auctioned items, at the event, and raised a fair amount of money. And to your point, it was actually auctioned off twice. The first person realized that they were not a willing dog owner, and then gave it back to be auctioned off a second time. And I believe it probably went home with the responsible person. And so that would be another example of a change that I think that would probably need to happen, at least to provide some sort of outlet for that kind of activity.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilman Vaughn. Councilman Jensen.
Yeah, I was kind of. Somebody's on.
Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, that was kind of my point, what Councilman Vaughn was saying, just to me that, yeah, we need to get rolling on this. But obviously some changes need to be made. So maybe we're going through first reading, not going through, not suspending rules, and making sure we're taking 3 readings on this and dotting all the i's and crossing all the t's and getting it as good as we can.
Ultimately, I would tell you all, you guys are the ones making the decisions on this. If you want changes, write them out, send them to us, tell us what you want. Okay, we provided this document to you. The police department is not in the business of writing ordinances. My job is to enforce them. The reason you have this in front of you and it's written by me is because it wasn't getting done by anybody else. We've been working on this thing for 4 years and nothing has happened. You need this somehow, some way. And if someone else wants to take the helm, I'm more than happy to turn it over. But short of that, you got what you got and make the changes. I'm more than happy to go along with it.
Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, Chief Elliott introduced me to this about 2 weeks ago, so I'm a relative newbie and looked into it, made some edits, as many of you have. The dilemma came from right now, of course, we don't have anything that is enforceable. And so the dilemma comes, yes, the red line, it bothers me, and I understand totally that the red line version just came out, so the public really hasn't had a chance to look at it. But if we try to reinstitute the full commission or the committee, it's the difference between a reasonably short time and, as you point out, probably potentially a couple more months until we get this implemented. So I asked Chief Elliott late this afternoon if it wouldn't be possible. The concern is always, will anything be done? So we say we're going to do the second reading, and will there be an opportunity to make any changes in that time? And so Chief Elliott agreed that we would be able to convene a meeting next week so that there's time for the public to at least go through the red line version that has just been made public, make comments. You can make them to us as councilmen, however you want to, but it seemed like a reasonable compromise with the meeting next week committed to. Then we at least know the public's going to have an opportunity to step in and make changes, that it won't just rest and die before the next meeting. So that my preference right now, even I understand all the objections, would be to go ahead and pass it at first reading. With the stipulation, obviously, public gets to comment on it next week and we get to be sure that there are comments before the second.
Are there any other questions for Chief Elliott right now? And we'll move on to any comments from the public.
My name is Teresa McGrander, 1825 North Keene. I do have a question. I have a dog that's been deemed fearless, but he was doing his job. He is a security job. He protects me. You can ask Kelly Brown when she come in. There was 2 dogs running loose. My dog was harnessed and leashed. I was in between my house and my neighbor's house when these 2 dogs come up. I went down to say, well, who are you? One of them went to sniff me, Milo, and him got into it. I got septic. I spent 3 days in ICU unit going septic. I don't remember those days. When I woke up in the hospital, it was like, where am I and why am I here? Kelly Brown did come up. I told her what happened. She went down and interviewed my neighbors down on 16th Street. It wasn't their dog. They couldn't find those 2 dogs. They thought I was lying. So my dog has been deemed vicious. The only vicious thing about Milo is he will lick you to death. And I have pity if you come to try to take him, because he will protect me and he will protect my home. And that is how he is trained. Kelly met him. She knows that he's not vicious, but he is still deemed here in Fremont as a vicious dog. So if you come take my dog and you take him, who's responsible for his care? Who's responsible? And how long will it take me to get my dog back? I don't see anywhere in this. Chief Elliott, can you answer me?
We're not able to answer.
Oh, okay. I just have a lot of questions. Thank you.
Excuse me. Larry Marvin, 1945 Morningside Road here in Fremont. My question is, like, when we have licenses, we have cat licenses and dog license, do we charge more money for a boxer dog, like supposedly supposed to be trained to be a vicious dog? And bulldogs, some of the bulldogs are also that they're sometimes classified as vicious dogs. And then if they get bitten like she did, do we have an ordinance that says the people should have insurance if they have one of these dogs that are considered potentially vicious dog, that they should have insurance for medical of the neighbors or whatever. So there is neighborly responsibility, I think it is, that I would say responsibility, that when they have a boxer or a bulldog, that we, when they get their license, give them a form, and maybe that might be something they can have in there, that they get a form that says, yes, they know that there is the potential that historically boxers and bulldogs are trained to bite people, and even little tiny dogs bite people. But anyway, that's what I was thinking, is we need to also protect people that get bitten. And I think that should be in the city ordinance too, that because if we don't have anything, that we should be getting something to protect citizens. Thank you.
Hi, Jan Pemberton, 113 East 12th Street. I'm also the president of Cats Angels Care. And I'm really happy to know tonight that this is going to be, that I have time to put some input into the ordinance. I wasn't sure what stage it was at. I just heard yesterday that it was happening tonight. So, so we help the citizens of Fremont and the city and the cats. And we very much want to be part of this conversation. I've looked at other ordinances in other cities, specifically Des Moines, of how they, some people call them feral cats, some people call them community cats, of the policies that they have or the ordinances. And I'm happy to hear that I can talk with Chief Elliott and some of my council members about this. I've met with a few of you before and just wanting very much to be part of the conversation and hopefully part of the solutions moving forward.
Thank you. Okay.
Good evening, council. My name is Kathy Robertson, 1896 Luther Lane in Hooper. I am the founder of an organization called Working Cat Project. We specialize in decreasing populations through spay and neuter. Let me say this, I have also worked, I've been on the board of the Blair Animal Shelter. I'm familiar with dangerous dogs and bite holds and rabies holds and things like that. I was actually, was present in the shelter and actually did the work. I have many issues. You're probably just going to have to cut me off when it's time. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just think that the council needs to take changes seriously. And before I run out of time, I don't think that this should be passed this evening. And here's a few reasons why. Contemporary. These ordinances are not contemporary. Jan mentioned Des Moines. I don't believe that the Humane Society of the United States was consulted or looked into. They have all of this spelled out, best care practices. Was a veterinarian involved in making any of these ordinances? Feral cat, a feral animal, the definition is not correct. A feral animal is one that is not socialized. It's not had human interaction. Has nothing to do with it being licensed, not licensed, or living as a wild animal. Tame cats can live as wild animals. Feral cat colony, that is not the definition of a feral cat colony. A colony is a group of cats that live together and act as one. There is a hierarchy. There is an alpha male or an alpha female, and they protect their territory and they don't let others in. Feral cat colony caretaker, person who provides care for. What does that mean? Care for food? I mean, what? I don't believe the definition of a caretaker is accurate either. Here's another issue I have. I don't believe that a lot of the way things are worded are in a professional manner. A neutered male, a spayed female is one that has been operated on. The correct terminology is one that has been surgically altered by a licensed veterinarian. That's the proper terminology. Sorry, let's just go off the top of my head here. Real quick. Several years ago, I babysat Paul and Linda Von Baron's little dog, Karen Terrier. And that dog was very well trained, best trained dog I've ever known. And it was walked 3 times a day. We were walking on the sidewalk. There was a child in its driveway. The dog, it is her instinct going after that little kid. She was on a leash, so, it wasn't a problem and I could, let's go. If that individual complained to someone, would that dog be deemed vicious? You cannot control animal behavior as much as you want to. They're animals. Another point, animals in the state of Nebraska are deemed public or private property. They are your property. This ordinance is full of ways that you can have your animal removed. It's very aggressive. You do this, we're going to take your animal. No questions asked, and you're going to have to pay for it. I think you're running into some issues with legalities of doing that because they are private property. I think all of that needs to be addressed. There is the part about, 3 strikes, you're out. Let's say your dog got out 3 times in a 2-year period and got picked up. You are deemed a reckless owner. And not only will your animal be taken away, but all the animals in your house will be taken away. It is my suggestion that this is not moved forward and that some type of group committee is put together that includes Humane Society of the United States, veterinarians. Thank you.
Red Yerger, 2318 East Fifth Street. I appreciate Chief Elliott's opening remarks and the fact that he acknowledged that I was a principal participant in drafting and crafting a lot of these, serving on a committee that was appointed to do so. I want to point out that that committee had a objective of balancing things between citizen protection, victims' rights, owner responsibilities and accountability, and animal rights as we attempted to tackle the problems, because Chief Elliott is right. Our code is outdated. He needs help. There isn't any question about that. We knew that a long time ago, and we worked on it diligently. Sometimes several times a month we met. And that committee was made up of regular citizens, a couple of council members, legal, chief of police, and I may be forgetting something, but the point being, we had citizen input. We had Dr. Pettit, we had other citizens involved in making those things happen as a part of our code rewrite. We also determined that we wanted to be known as a pet-friendly community. That is, we need to enforce the laws and make sure that citizens have protection from dangerous animals and the like. But we also need to be noted as a pet-friendly community. Just about every other house in town has pets. And so setting rules that are overly strict and burdensome and doesn't give off the right vibe is something we tried to avoid. I was one of those that called and said something about the red line. I can tell you that I was the scrivener in this committee. Started out that legal was the scrivener. It was only a meeting or two in that this was a rewrite that was constant and nonstop. And ultimately, I ended up being the scrivener that was, and all those changes were put into Word files, redlined, and were reviewed at the subsequent meetings and approved by the council, city council lawyer that we had at the time, which is not our current council. So all of those changes brought forward up until about November of last year were changes that had been discussed and reconciled, approved by that committee and the council. Not the city council, but that committee and legal. Then there was apparently some 35 or 45 days of additional adjustments to what we had originally proposed. And I struggled trying to find all of those changes. So I sat down with the changes that I had from the red line, the last version that was created, because I had it. And I sat down and compared to what we are doing today, and I discovered lots of things that gave me some pause. I won't try to go through them all tonight because I don't think I have time. But there are some things that are troubling. And I'm just going to mention a few as we go through. We no longer, according to the new code, would require trained and certified CSO to do animal control. Our committee discussed that ad nauseum as to the fact that animal control is different than policing and they need special training. That's being removed. We've now added a bite table, which may be fine, but it doesn't define whether that bite table apply, there's no definition of victims. So is this a human bite table, the seriousness of an attack on a human, or is this an attack on a dog? I know for a fact that we had a case not too long ago where a German Shepherd jumped the fence, attacked and killed their neighbor's dog, and then repeated that same event by getting out the front door and attacking 2 grandparents and their grandchildren and 2 dogs walking down the street. So the question is, do these rules and bites apply to animals or just to humans? I think it needs to be clarified. We took out the provocation statements with regards to if animals are provoked, are they guilty of being a dangerous animal if they're provoked? We eliminated that language. I'd like to address a little bit the discussion before I run out of time, even though I could go ad nauseum here because I have several things that I think need to be addressed and modified, at least discussed. But one of the things that the committee wanted to do for sure was because of the Dodge County Humane Society debacle and the termination of the contract, we wanted a committee, not the appeals committee that's described herein that addresses whether or not you get to revoke your classification as a dangerous or potentially dangerous dog, but whether or not the reports that we get from a shelter that we commission to do the work for the city are reporting accurately, tie out to the dispatch records, that they're have facilities that meet the standards and get inspection reports from the state, and that those things are reviewed and sent off to the city council for a review on a periodic basis. So you are informed, because we weren't informed with the mess that we had before that led up to the special committee and the termination of the contract. That's been stricken. And the reckless owner provision here is the most egregious of all. It's been addressed by some, but that late addition would take animals away without trial. If I had 3 speeding tickets, would the chief of police come out and confiscate my license plates and my vehicle and send my vehicles to the crusher? I hope not, because it's private property. Animals are also private property. And suggesting that a CSO can make a list, come and take your animals and potentially euthanize them is ridiculous, and that needs attention.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you for letting me speak. Donna Smith, 1206 East Sixth Street. I hope that as you guys are figuring all this out, I hope that you would consider involving a veterinarian. And it wouldn't hurt to have some public education on this matter for say a dog's tied outside for a certain length of time, longer than it should be. You know, maybe give these owners some education and give them a chance to care for that pet before yanking it and putting it in a kennel. And it's just, I don't know. I read through some of the agenda and a lot of things I don't agree with, but it just seems like it's pretty harsh. And I hope you guys really consider some changes. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Sharon Robin, 312 West Fifth. This is just a little bit of an input over a number of things that have been discussed here. I'm going to read it off to you. Non-punitive, requiring strict adherence to policies without allowing for flexibility, depending on the circumstances, carries the risk of unfairly penalizing people and punishing animals, or even harming them. Instead of creating a situation that removes animals from good homes, such as pet limit laws, or prevents pets from being reunited with their families, such as a mandatory shelter reclamation fees, we can craft laws that support communities and provide the necessary resources that allow families to make healthy choices for pets. Relevant policies should be carefully drafted to ensure the anticipated outcome will be achieved. For example, mandatory spay-neuter will not increase sterilization rates if the problem in the community is lack of access to services, and cat licensing will not decrease a community cat population because there are no owners to obey the law. Make sure the policy language is crafted in a way that will actually produce a desirable solution to a given problem. Thank you.
Ray Tuff, 323 West Fifth Street. I just wanted to see if I could enter into the record, let you know that I am a policy leader for the Humane Society of the United States, and nobody has reached out and asked for any opinion. And we do have a toolkit that is available for municipalities. Can I enter that? I've got a copy for each one of you guys here.
I would take a motion to receive. Councilman Vaughn.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Councilman Sukram.
I'll second.
Okay. Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
So basically, what it comes down to is the mentality of, oh, if you do this with your dog, the dog needs to be taken. That's not what usually works. What usually works is the sense of helping these owners. For instance, a dog getting out 3 times in a 2-month period could possibly be because the dog is not spayed or neutered. And we have nothing in place in, Fremont to help the citizens with any spay and neuters. It's all going back onto the one who holds the sheltering contract, basically. And that's just not the mentality to work on. We need to think about ways that we can actually help the citizens rather than punish them. For instance, this also was basically like copied straight from NHS, and these policies do not work for Omaha. Why would they work for us? As far as there is one section that says it shall be unlawful for any person to bring any animal into the city which has under any other jurisdiction not limited to the state of Nebraska been judicially or administratively determined by a jurisdiction to be dangerous or potentially dangerous, a vicious animal or public nuisance. Now, for running a rescue, we do take in animals from other states. There are some states such as California that do charge owner surrender fees. And if they don't, then that's because the owner has surrendered and said that the dog has bitten before. So 90% of the time, the dog hasn't even bitten, but the owners just don't want to pay the owner surrender fee. So when we take those dogs in, that's going to stop that when dogs and cats don't know county lines or state lines. So there's also one section in here that for the bite scale, for instance, it states that if your dog snap or miss or injuries prevented by thick clothing or obnoxious or aggressive behavior. I don't know about you guys, but I think almost any dog can be obnoxious. What does that mean? Like, this just actually gives too much power to the CSOs, to the police, to anybody. I mean, having a dog approach a person on the street and the police department or CSOs can use lethal force. That's not fair. And it's just not going to work. And you guys are going to be opening yourselves up to more lawsuits and more, emotional citizens as well. So I would encourage you guys not to pass this tonight and also try to form some type of board that would come together, because Chief has stated that he would love to hand this over to somebody else. But maybe that's what we need to do is get a board together and come up with something better than what's presented tonight. Thank you.
Good evening again. Ray Meister, 121 South William Avenue. I definitely appreciate everything that you have said about pets. Pets are important. My only concern is this. I'm hearing more concern tonight for pets than our children.
Okay, any comments from the council on this? Councilman Jensen.
Yeah, I guess I know there are people that don't want this approved the way it stands. I don't think anybody wants this approved the way it stands. Like Chief Elliott said, this sat here for 4 years waiting for committees and nothing happened. If we put this up the way it is, at least we've got a clock running. We've got 4 weeks for whoever's that interested in it to get something done and get something that we can agree on. If we really want to move on this, we need to move on this now and get it started.
Okay, Councilman Vaughn.
I did have a thought, and I'm not necessarily articulating it into a motion at this point in time, but this, even the red line version appears that there are provisions for creating an animal control commission. And that would be comprised of the chief of police or a designee, a veterinarian, and then other members of the public. And would that animal control commission be a good entity to work through some of these challenges that we've all been hearing about tonight, and then be able to come back and offer something that's had the public input and had some of the, nonsense stuff taken out of there? Do we create that group and task them with it?
I'd like to address that if I could.
Please.
I would say, so, and Councilman, you're referred to this as well. We did remove that, and I specifically am the one that took that out. What I would tell you is that if you want a organization that is concerned about the welfare of the animals in this community, I don't think that's a bad idea. But the police department should not be involved in it, okay? I don't want another board that I have to report to. I report to the council, I report to the mayor, I report to the city administrator, I report to the academy, I report to the crime commission, I report to the police standards advisory committee. And I could go on, okay? I don't want another committee I got to report to. I think that an animal welfare commission is a good idea. And I think that someone could do that, but it's going to cost you money. You're going to have to put together a group of people and probably pay somebody to do this. Now, people are going to say it's the police department's job to take care of animals. It is the police department's job to take care of animal control, not animal welfare. Okay. What a lot of these people in this room are upset about is animal welfare. I'm talking about animal control. I'm all for animal welfare, but the police department's not the place to do it. Those are my thoughts. You're my bosses. I'll do what I'm told to do, but you've heard what I got to say.
Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, and this one has conflicted me because I fully agree that the reckless owner definition is not right. That needs to be modified. The provocation, we probably do need an oversight committee for animal care, but it's the same problem that we have with the library books. This is now, it's a matter of beliefs as much as anything. And if we wait till we can get to an ordinance crafted and something that's really, really good, it's going to take a long time if it happens at all. And in my mind, the best cure for uncertainty caused by disagreement among people is just a deadline and urgency. And I think that's the only reason I'm supporting this. I agree. I don't really like all the red line revision. It needs a lot of work. But if we don't at least force ourselves into some type of a time frame, I'm just concerned that this is going to drag on and on and on. And for what it's worth, I am a veterinarian. I've had a dog's teeth around my neck. My son trains animals professionally. He's been involved with animals you couldn't even get in the room with when he started. So I'm very sensitive to this. This is something that's very much an issue of community welfare. And so it's really mixed emotions for me, but I understand the wisdom of waiting and taking our time, but I think it's better to press ourselves with some urgency and force ourselves to address these questions.
Councilwoman Ganem.
Yes, I will echo those sentiments with you. And we do get calls on dangerous animals and what are we doing about that? And people have met with certainly our Chief Elliott on that and what can happen and how can we help them.
Councilman Ellis.
Yeah, that's definitely a touchy subject. What I would be apt to do tonight is to vote on the first reading. Chief Elliott has made it clear that he wants input. So if there's anyone that's very interested in making changes to this, I think we are open for extreme amount of changes, but now we need to do it. If we find the point where we can't go forward or it's going to take longer, I would say we come back after acknowledging or at least viewing how the next 2 weeks works. Did Chief Elliott get a lot of input? Did he get a lot of, or did he get none? And then that's going to tell us. So I think as a council, we probably could pass this tonight, the first reading, and then let's pull the barometer out to see where we're at the second reading to find out maybe, we sound like we do need a commission. We also need to give Chief Elliott something to work with. So I think there's two paths that we can go down after we get some input from the citizens to find out how close this is. No, that's kind of the path I would like to go for, is pass the first reading tonight. And then let's see just how much we can get accomplished in the next 2 weeks.
And I'm just going to quickly say, I appreciated all the comments tonight, focused on the ordinance, focused on how we can solve this issue. Chief Elliott was very clear. We have to have urgency on this. He needs something to work with. He's bringing this forward. We've had 4 years of looking at this already. So I think what we all have to accept is that through this process, we're probably going to get to an ordinance where we're not going to have complete agreement by every single person on every single thing in this ordinance, because there is so many detail. So there's going to have to be something that at the end we accept and we can move forward with. So I guess that's my challenge through this all, is that we have to have something. So let's work to make that happen. So Councilman Jensen.
No further discussion. I'll make the motion to approve the first reading of ordinance 5639.
Councilman Vaughn.
Due to the chief's willingness to work with the citizens on future improvements to this, I will second the motion.
Okay, cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Take a motion to adjourn. Oh, first reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, amending chapter 6, article 1 and article 2 of the Fremont Municipal Code, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance and providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect on first reading.
Okay, thank you, Tyler.
Welcome.
Take a motion to adjourn now. Councilman Sukram.
I'll make the motion.
Councilman Vaughn.
I will second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
We are adjourned. Have a good night, everybody.